Hey, you're listening to the Property Heroes podcast from Fantastic Services, the place where we talk openly with architects, developers, interior designers, coaches, and anybody who makes property sell fast in a better place. Fantastic Services is the number one place to book any kind of service there is. And we are happy to join, and today we're joined by Elaine Penhaul, who's the owner of Lemon and Lime Interiors. Elaine, hello. It's so nice to have you on the podcast. You're the first guest on this project, actually. And I know you've written a really good book, which is about how to sell high and sell fast, which is, I guess, what most of us want to do when we're into the property business. So, Elaine, tell us a bit about your background and why you're writing this book.
Hello, it's lovely to be here. Thank you very much for the invitation. I'm very excited to be here. And exactly as you say, I've just launched my book called Sell High, Sell Fast, How to Sell Your Home in the Quickest Time Possible. And for the highest offer. And the background really to the book is that we work in what's known in the US as the home staging industry. It's something that's just coming into this country. It's very much an emerging industry. And I spend a lot of time with the people that we're helping to sell their homes, explaining to them why they need to really make the most of their presentation before they bring their property onto the market. And of course, inevitably, we can't reach every vendor out there. And we know that a lot of the information that we talk about isn't something that they can necessarily access anywhere else. So I thought, well, let's just put down the conversation I would have with one of our clients in their kitchen. I'm going to write it all down, and then it becomes accessible to a much wider audience. So that's really why the book was written.
Okay, so you say this is kind of a new service in the UK. I mean, we've all watched the property TV stuff where it's like, oh, home makeovers and this stuff here. And there's a couple of famous people now on television. What's like you can watch paint dry and say, like, this is how you flip your home for more and so forth. I mean, what was your personal inspiration in property? I mean, are you an investor yourself? Are you a designer? What's your personal inspiration?
Yeah, no, my personal interest, I came into it through my investment portfolio, which I took on in 2008 when I got 4 small children to feed, and the property market was just, awful. So I suddenly had to get my act together. It wasn't something I'd done before. The property came to me by way of a divorce. So I just suddenly had to learn how to manage it, rent it well, sell it well. And it seemed to me common sense, really, if you like, that decorating, making things look really nice before I was getting pushed on the market, either to let or to sell, was probably a good idea. And in fact, that proved to be the case.
I mean, I know, because we've spoken before, Elaine, and I think one of the very interesting things I find about you is this thing about selling high and selling fast. I mean, you said the traditional agent is not necessarily, they go out and said, put a price up, a standard price, because like I've sold a couple of properties and they're like, oh, they put the price up and then, you wait 3 months and they go like, oh, set your price down. So take me through the process of like let's pretend I'm a client and take me through the process of what happens. Like I call Elaine and says, now, I have this property. What would be the things you're doing?
Okay, so the first conversation that we would have on the phone is really what your aim is. So how quickly you're looking to get your property onto the market, whether you're looking to downsize, for example, or whether you're looking for a relocation, whether the property is part of either a divorce or whether it's something that's come by way of a bereavement, for example, because all of those give me information about what the property is likely to look like. I'll be asking you questions like, how long have you lived in the property, for example, and then things about the property. How many bedrooms do you have? How many reception rooms? Where is it located? And that kind of thing. And then from there, the next step, depending on the location and depending on our diaries, because my aim is to get your property onto the market as quickly as possible, but looking amazing, you don't want to wait for 2 or 3 months while I faff around with a paintbrush. We'll either do a video call and you'll walk me through your house on WhatsApp, for example, or I'll make an appointment and come over and drink coffee with you, and you'll show me around while I'm there.
Nice.
And at that point, we'll decide, what's possible, what your budget is, and what we might be going to do to get you the best sale you possibly can.
Sounds really interesting, Elaine. And what are some of the things you're doing? I mean, we have a service called After Builders Cleaning, which to me was an eye opener. I didn't come from the cleaning industry or anything else, 12 years ago before I started Fantastic Services. And for me, that was an eye-opening service. It's a service where they use razor blades to scrape off any plastic residue that's sitting on the window. They have special tools to remove cement. They have all this other stuff. I mean, and I always say that it's the service that takes a property from being a building site into being a home. That's what After Builders Cleaning is. That's one of the services we've been specializing in. And I realize now that I'm renting or was renting a property, it's like, oh my God, there's still cement on this and that. And it just doesn't have that feel of a home. And this is a very serious deep clean. They're not cheap. It's not a £30 clean for 2 hours. This is a proper deep After Builders clean. That's one of the things that we do very well. What are some of the things that you'd recommend? Is it cleaning? Take me through. Is it painting? Is it picking color? What's the...
It depends very much on the property. So we work with everything from new builds that you're describing, and we just wish that every developer would do the after build clean, because sometimes,
So do we, but yeah.
It's quite an issue in our world.
To me,
and
to me it seems crazy. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
It's like it costs between 180, 300, 400 pounds maybe, but it just makes that massive difference. It's like
trust me,
you walk in there. Yeah.
The difference it makes to them at our end is if they haven't done it and our furniture gets damaged as a result, then they're paying for the furniture afterwards, which is much more expensive than cleaning in the first place. But that's a kind of a whole other story, going into new build where the floors aren't down, never mind the cleaning hasn't been done with the furniture.
Yeah.
If it's a lived-in property, so we work with everything from new builds like that right the way through to a property that somebody has perhaps lived in for 30 or 40 years, and it can be huge property with lots of outbuildings, that kind of thing. And in those cases, we can do pretty much anything that needs doing, right from decluttering. So, for example, in the book, I take you through a process that we call address. So we'll assess the property, who the buyer is going to be, then we'll look at whether it needs decluttering. And the decluttering might be a start of getting things perhaps to an auction house or to a charity or out to friends and family, or simply packing anything that's excess ready for the move. From there, you can go on and get decorating done. So, for example, where properties have perhaps been decorated back in the 80s, 90s, when heritage colours were really, really in, and even the ceilings are red, we can get all of that done so that it's in something that's a bit more fashionable, kind of a neutral that's not going to offend anybody. Then we'll move on to looking at how the space is used, because I'm sure you understand that when we live in a property, we don't always use the space in the way that it was perhaps designed in the first place. So an example of that might be that a spare bedroom has become a storage room or a hobby room once the kids have all moved out. But we strongly recommend, if you're selling a 4-bedroomed house, then it has 4 beds in 4 different bedrooms. Just looking at the space and how it's used, and then emphasizing those little corners of the house that are really, the bit that catches the sun in the evening, and you might want to sit with a glass of wine.
Wow.
And we'll create those little vignettes, they're called, but we'll create those little vignettes to try and capture the lifestyle that somebody's coming in.
So you're creating the dream of the person to buy, because it's like, this is what I always say, like I walk into a lot of properties, and I'm bought a few myself and this stuff, and you go like instantly, whether you're buying it or not, or whether this is an investment property or this is a property I would want to live in. I mean, and these trends change, and it's a different target market. So you'd say you're more of an expert in understanding what it is that's going to sell. because in the old days, that was what the real estate agent was supposed to do, right? That was supposed to be what they were earning their fees for. But I guess that art, it's an art form, right? Staging the property is an art form, right? Because it's like you need to know what the customers are thinking. You need to do this stuff. I mean, we do a lot of decluttering, but that's mainly for people who live in the homes, not for, we don't do the redecoration. And it seems to me like you're also placing furniture or moving certain things around, which I think properties, if you are thinking about it, so it's a very simple question, is really thinking about it, what's the biggest ROI? Like, what's the biggest return on, like, let's say cleaning is 300, renting the furniture is 1,000 or whatever it is. What's the biggest and fastest return on investment that they get? What's the sort of...
That's an interesting question. Sometimes people will call and they'll say, I've got a budget of X, and it might be a few £100, and what do you suggest that we do? So they'll say to me, how do we invest this £500, for the sake of argument, to get the best ROI on our property? And I will then look at the property and make that judgment on that particular property. Now, very often, if they've got a relatively small budget, then it will be about cleaning. It'll be about just moving things out of sight and about cleaning. If they've got a bigger budget, then it will be about making sure that the furniture is really targeted to appeal to their to their buyer, to the person that we believe and their estate agent believes will be the person that comes along and buys the property. So what's selling? If you're targeting a young professional market, it might be a Scandi look, for example, and bringing in that kind of furniture. But we will also say, and sometimes I'll say, there's nothing I can do with that budget because it really, really isn't worth investing an amount of money that isn't going to make an impact on the sale. So we're always very clear as to whether there is any ROI on the budget that's available. And if there isn't, then we will say so.
Yeah, no,
I won't take money for the sake of it.
I can imagine that it's the same as with this stuff here, but it's like we're looking at a property that's 250,000 that can be increased to 380 by doing the right things. I mean, which is some of the things I've done in my past, where it was just by opening up, making sure that the kitchen was in with that, and made the little bar on it, and the investment was maybe 8,000-9,000, and you're talking about 120,000. So I hope you can help the guys on what that's actually worth for you doing. I mean, because I think that's our biggest stuff, is like the fear is like, I'm going to be spending money on making money. Not everybody thinks like an entrepreneur, right?
No.
And in property, what we are talking about, your expertise is this, right? Your expertise is like this stuff, and seeing many properties, your expertise is like, how do I do that simpler? How do I make that grow, right? So I hope that's some discussion where they're open for it. You sometimes have to do the same as that. It's going to go that. I hope they're open for those discussions, because I know how much it matters. But it starts with cleaning, then it's maybe decorating, then it's the furniture, then it's maybe doing something bigger like construction, like maybe tearing a wall down. I mean, one of the things I always think about is kitchens, right? Because it's like this is a bigger investment, right? Kitchen and bathrooms, that's a bigger investment than just painting and decorating. We know that. So how often do you think that they really should change the kitchen, or should they just change the color of the scheme? Like,
more often than not, the type of kitchens that we come across most often are the type that were put in the 90s, for example, that are wooden doors, either pine wooden doors or the dark oak wooden doors. The sort I mean.
I know exactly what you're
saying. Kind of the detailing on, and those you can make a dramatic difference by painting them, by changing the handles, and by changing a worktop. So, for example, rather than it being a Formica worktop, as was originally put in with those type of kitchens, taking those off, putting in either a quartz if budget will allow, or even an oak block worktop, painting the cabinets so that now suddenly you've got a painted kitchen, and going to B&Q or whatever and buying new handles. And it makes a dramatic difference without the cost of stripping out the whole kitchen. Often ovens and sinks are fine. We do change those occasionally, but we rarely change a whole kitchen before a sale, because inevitably somebody going in is going to choose a kitchen.
One of the things I was so surprised about, Elaine, is like we do a lot of oven cleaning. We do a lot of oven cleaning and also as part of a warranty. And I was surprised because I also didn't come from the cleaning industry. And it's like, I was surprised because I was like, okay, let's test this out. Took the oven out, unscrew the doors, put it in some kind of bath. It boils a little bit, and then this stuff here. I was like, that's a new oven. It was like, that took 30 minutes. And that makes such a difference because the whole feeling of that, I don't want someone else's grease on the inside of the door when I'm buying a property, right? It's like because we do these end of tenancy cleanings, we do these move in and move out cleaning, and I'm like, some of the simplest things, it makes such a difference, and they're like £35, and that to me means, what can it mean in a sale price? That those things. I mean, we're talking about a 33 pounds or a 40-pound job. How much can that make on a sales price? I mean, just doing that.
Yeah, just that difference when people. Things like a good example of that in our world would be the grouting in a shower. So where the grouting in a shower has gone mouldy along the bottom, how it goes very black, just taking that out and re-grouting makes a dramatic difference, because suddenly now the grout is clean and white, or and it looks like a whole different shower. It's amazing.
I mean, what's the kind of worst things you've seen? I mean, I've seen some properties from the 70s, some kitchens from the 70s. And there's no way, even with changing the handles, even changing the doors, it's just because back then the layout was different, right? I mean, what are we looking for now? Because I remember when I was growing up, we called it the conversation kitchen, right? That was so popular. I'm from Scandinavia, right? So the conversation kitchen was so popular. This is where you have the bar, you have the opening, it's half the living room, half this stuff here. What are people looking for now? I mean, I
think now people are looking still primarily for some kind of open plan living, so where they can have a kitchen with a dining table, or perhaps a couple of armchairs in. So if you can take out a wall, for example, if you're going to do big jobs before sale, you can take out a wall to open up a space, for example. What's increasingly common, and I think particularly since people have been at home for much more time, is people are wanting another room, so a separate reception room, and whether that's used during the daytime as a home office, for example, or whether it's used in the evening by the kids watching television, but now open plan living for the kitchen and another reception room is really key.
That's really interesting you say that, Elaine, because I looking, and we work with some of the largest estate agents as well. So we've seen people gone from a 2-bedroom to a 3-bedroom, and what they're doing on the 3rd bedroom is they're converting it into a home office.
Yes.
And or what they're doing now is because we also do storage, we have a flexible storage that you can come and pick up. They are, we're not talking about the actual sale of the property, right? Which is what you're in, but we're talking about living in it. And they've taken out that storage and said, let's put it somewhere else, because people don't have attics anymore. They don't have basements, especially not in central London where we do the most. They've taken that out, made it into a 3rd room, so to speak, and that's become a home office. So we've seen that. And the estate agent says, a 3-bedroom sells now more easily than a 2-bedroom right now. And that's the same you've seen on during this time here.
Yeah, absolutely. People need now to understand where they're going to work, and we spend a lot of time creating, even in quite tiny spaces, the ability for people to see where they can work. If they buy this house, well, where's my desk going to go? And in many cases, of course, where's my partner's desk going to go? Because as we all have learned to our cost, actually you can't have 2 of you on a Zoom call at once.
No, we learned that the same way as I guess everybody else who's going to be, all our listeners are going to be saying the same. It's I'm half my time is on Zoom or on video calls. So it's the same. How do I do that at home? And so you create that dream basically, or at least the imagination of it. Because I said some people, when you walk into a home, you have no idea where am I going to put what, and with smaller spaces. It's like I have been looking a lot at like Japanese ways of doing certain things with the doors for a smaller space. Like, how do you have a folding table that at the day in the living room becomes the working desk along with the other one, and then folding it down again so it's gone and doesn't interfere. And my wife's hobbies with sewing also takes a lot of space. There's a lot of sewing machines around. It was like, okay, so when that's done at home now, so it's like instead of buying a new property or two more properties or this stuff here, I think we are needing more space. I mean, and we in our removals company, we're also seeing people moving out of central London. Actually, we're seeing that happening as well.
Yeah.
So what? So what? I mean, if you could give one tip, like on a property, like one tip, what would be the most important thing to do first? Or like if you really don't have the budget, what would be the one tip you'd give?
I think the one thing that I always say to people is plan ahead. If you're going to sell your property, then plan it, because so often in what we've been used to being able to do is to almost get up in the morning, think, oh, I think I might call the estate agent today. Call the estate agent. The estate agent pops over, takes a few photos on their phone, and suddenly your property's on Rightmove, and there you go. And you've lost that chance. The first 2 weeks on the market when you launch are absolutely key. And if you haven't got it right before that, then so plan ahead. Do whatever it is that you think you're going to need to do. Read the book. Read the book I've just written.
Yeah. And what's it called? What's it called again? Do you have a copy of it?
I have, actually.
Yeah.
Yeah. Sell high,
sell fast. Which is what we all want to do, right?
Best possible price in the quickest possible time.
Beautiful, Elaine. No, which is what.
And then plan before you get on the market.
So you'd say something like, I mean, we used to pick up the estate agent first. Actually, it's you call you, or let's say us and this stuff here, or call you if you want the advice on how and what, we can do the jobs. We're not going to give you advice on what to do. We'll be we'll be the ones who does it. But to get the advice, call you and say, like, look, before you put it on the market, at least do it clean, right? Because the guy's going to come up there. I mean, and at least make sure you declutter the whole thing. You can put some of it in storage already, because then your space is going to be looking bigger. Because those first photos, I mean, they must matter so much, right? It's like we all know. We all know the same. It's with Airbnbs, right? We do a lot of pre-planning from Airbnbs. That became a big one. Right now, I don't know how Airbnb is doing on the market right now, but the whole pre-planning of Airbnb is like, you're not looking at a cluttered space. You don't want to have a cluttered space that you're putting on the photos. It's like, it's not going to sell. It's a bit like if you put your car up on this stuff and you haven't washed it, right? It's like, oh yeah, it's got a bit of mud, and it's got a 2 coffee cups and a plastic bag from the supermarket inside the car, and it's like, here you go. At least clean it first, right? So it's the same with the house, right? So you'd say the first thing is, like, don't call the estate agent, call Elaine, right? That's kind of what they do first, right? So call them first, go in there, get the advice, and then what do you have any stories that, like, can you quantify, like, how much have you added to a property value, or sell first? How much have you added, do you think, in your lifetime of this, doing it?
We had a really interesting one this very early part of this year, and it was a property that's been rented for probably 12 years, something like that, and the estate agent came out and valued it because the owner at that point wasn't certain whether it was going to be sold or rented again. And it was valued, I think, at about 575,000. And it was very tired. And so the owner called us and said, look, I don't know whether I'm going to sell it or not, but I want to get some work done regardless, and then we'll get it revalued and then decide what we're going to do. So we went in, we decorated, we painted the kitchen in the way that I've just described, changed all the worktops, didn't take the kitchen out. We did take out the bath and put in a big walk-in shower instead of the bathroom. And the work probably cost in the region of 30,000. So there was significant, there was some external work that needed doing as well, some repair work and so on. And the same agent came back at the end of the work and revalued it at 750.
Wow.
Now, You know,
I
we
mean,
had
that
got
if
round
you're
to doing
looking at that,
furniture.
right? So it's a, the way you should be thinking is it's a £30,000 investment,
Mm.
and you've added 250,000, and
Mm.
you did that in what, 2 months?
Yeah,
What
yeah,
faster
yeah,
return on investment can you get? There's
yeah.
very little you can. I mean, obviously you own the property first, because you can't just,
No,
it's like, I
no.
mean, but also I think there's a couple of people who buy those bad properties and then said like spend that 30,000, then put it back on the market within
Yeah,
a month or something else. I
yeah,
guess that there are others snapping that up. So, because everything, I'm relatively new to the property market in my own sense. I bought a couple of properties many years ago, and then I sold them. I said, "Oh, there's no way a council flat in Bermondsey can ever go over 250, right?" Yeah. Right. Let's just set on that. It's like 680 now, but it's in the SC1, that's like, there's no way. So all these funny things is like, well, there's no way it can go with that. It's like, yeah, we'll get rid of it. And
I
it's
know. I know. And
we didn't
property
take
really is, it still has always been, just solid investment, I think. It may not be dramatic, but generally it has crept up,
But even if it creeps
year
up
on
with
year.
10%, even if it only crept up
Yeah,
with 10%, over the 10-year stuff, it's still better than keeping the money in the bank, isn't it? I mean,
yeah,
it's like,
yeah, exactly.
and like
Yeah,
when we saw the big crashes many years ago, I mean, the problem was more about people's leveraging of their stuff that really
mm,
was the danger. I mean, and
yes.
obviously I said, like, but it's good to have you, and also knowing that, I know now I'm going to call you before I sell anything, because it's like, should I, I've always said, like, should I take the bathtub out? So, one property I had is like, without the bathtub, that's for me. I'm Scandinavian. It's like, we don't really have the same thing with bathtubs in London. Oh, if you don't have the bathtub, it's not going to rent out. It's like, and I realized there's a lot of cultural things. So also understanding that, and understanding your local area is so important, and what sells. I think that, to me, you think that when you call these estate agents, they're going to do that. No, they come around now. They just take the photos and then they go like, oh, it's on the market, right? So it's like, there are, I'm not going to say certain things about estate agents, because I guess there's all differences in every single estate agent you're using. But
Yeah, and I think as well, what's happened since the advent of the online agents, for example, um, then it's been, because they've come in as disrupting the market, if you like, very cheaply, offering to sell a house very cheaply. Um, then high street estate agents have had to compete with that to keep any business, and so what they've been having to do is to cut their fees. They've been, and simply it doesn't stack up. If you look at what an estate agent is charging, they cannot afford to spend the time
yeah.
with their vendors. If they're charging less than 1%, they simply don't have the time to spend with their vendors to explain to them or help them get a property ready to be sold. And we say to our vendors that we strongly recommend that you really have that conversation with your estate agent, and you will get, like anything in life, you're getting what you're paying for. If you're paying them a sensible percentage, then you can expect from them the kind of help to give you some advice, or to bring in a service like ours, to bring in services like yours as well. But actually, if you're trying to pin them down to charging you the same as you would for an online agent that gets paid for listing, then you
No,
know.
I fully understand you, Elaine, and I think it's an advice to everyone. Is like, you sometimes get what you pay for, and as I understood, because I always thought before I got into this, it's like, oh well, cleaning is relatively simple and stuff. There's so many layers of it. I didn't know that. And I didn't know that, okay, you need to specialize stuff, rather than just putting chemicals in an oven, and it comes back differently, because with the chemicals, okay, yeah, it gets clean, but it'll smell for 3 weeks, and your whole place will smell of chemicals, if they're doing it with chemicals. But then there's the hot bath thing, where they do this stuff and then scrape it off with a razor blade and so forth. Like, the afterbuild is clean, and how there's a ways of cleaning the fridge now without disrupting it, and so forth, that makes it cleaner. So you do get what you pay for, and this is, I guess, the same with everything else, with builders and outside, inside. I mean, what do you think? On with regards to the layout of properties? I mean, do you think that's do you think that's important, or do you think that that's on an advice to advice basis? Or like, should, because that's the big restoration work versus the interior stuff? Because you also talked about furniture. That's what I want to know. Like if I'm thinking about selling, should I be looking at the furniture, or should I be looking at the exterior, or should I what? Because we understood that
the first thing,
decluttering is probably the first one, right?
yeah, probably, yeah. And the first thing is, think about your buyer's journey. What's your buyer doing? Well, the chances are that your buyer, before they go anywhere near Rightmove, for example, or one of the or an estate agent, the chances are that they've been thinking about buying a house or buying a new house for quite some time, and they've been scrolling through really beautiful images on things like Instagram, on House. They've been seeing things in magazines all over everywhere, and then they think, right, okay, so we've got the money now. They've perhaps got their mortgage in principle sorted, and they think, right, okay, so now we can go house hunting. So click Rightmove. Oh, good Lord. You scroll down 3 properties in any price bracket you choose, and I challenge you to get down 3 properties without finding an unmade bed. It just doesn't happen. And then the next thing,
and that's like a service you do for 30 odd pounds, 3 hours, 3 hours simple cleaning, right, before you take the photos. Oh my God. Yeah. It's like just at least do your bed.
Yeah, the next thing then. So your buyer looks and they see your house and it's been really well, you've really tidied up, you've really made an effort. So the next thing, they're going to drive past. They think, yeah, well, let's check out the location. If it's where we think it is, then it'll be great. So they drive past your house. And now suddenly, as they drive past, they find the front gate is hanging off its hinges. They look at it. It's got peeling paint on the windows, on the fascias, on the garden hasn't been mowed in weeks, and they think, we've got to go back to the drawing board now, and all of these things. So think about your buyer journey, because all of that happens before they've even booked a viewing.
I mean, so the way I'm actually thinking about it, Elaine, is like time, right? Because like we always say in fantastic services, we're selling time. Right, we're selling the time of free time and this stuff here. So I'm thinking about when I'm going and buying a property, it's like, oh, I'm going to have to do this, and everything costs money. I mean, time costs money, but time is money. So having done that beforehand, because it's like you can't necessarily, you're not going to choose their furniture for them when they move in. You're not going to choose necessarily the whole layout and stuff. And some people will want what I call the builder's dream, but they get snapped up so fast that on the residential market, there's no way we're going to get those. They get, they're done at auctions and everything else. And so really taking care of that. So little things like, fixing a gate doesn't cost much, right? You call a handyman, it's not much. Mowing a lawn is like £36. You book it online, that's the website. It costs so little to do the stuff, clear the weeds out, get this stuff in, and bam, for a couple of £100, you can add tens of thousands of pounds on it so easily.
Well, the difference is it's not even what we talk about, it's not even about adding the value to it, it's getting the sale at all. Because sometimes, if your gate's hanging off, your lawn's unmowed, then out of 100 buyers for whom your house might be perfect, there's only perhaps 6 of them that would take on a house that looks like that. And out of those 6, every single one of them is going to make you a low offer because there's so much work that needs doing. So, and if it may be that 5 of those 6 can't even be bothered to make you a low offer, they're not really interested because exactly as you say, it's going to take them time to fix it. You've now got 1 buyer out of 100 that's going to come along, make you a really low offer, and you're going to take it or turn it down. So you've either got a very low offer or you've got a house that's stuck on the market. So it's not even about putting the value on, it's getting your sale at all.
Wow. And that's what you said about the selling fast, because you very clearly, it's a bit like launching podcasts or doing other things. And it's like if something has been on the site for forever, the conversion goes down and down and down. I mean, like, I'm not going to look at, it's been there for 3 months. I look at the newest listings, right? So you're saying the first 2 weeks is the most crucial one. And if you don't get it right in those 2 weeks, it's like, well, take it off and leave it for 2 years before, it's like it really only those 2 weeks where it matters, right? So you're saying that it's not that, and it's not the timing about the seasonality, right? It's not like whether you're selling in January and this stuff here. It's about the first 2 weeks. Does seasonality come into play, or is it?
Less than it used to. We used to have in this country, there used to be a very seasonal market. So spring was really good. So from March through until about June, until the kids broke up from school, those were your key months, and everybody wanted to be on the market in at that time of year.
Yeah.
That's flattened off dramatically, I think, over the last 2 or 3 years. And now we see, for example, the highest spike on Rightmove viewings for looking on Rightmove on the website is Boxing Day right now, because everybody is at home, and then that's when people start to think about perhaps moving house when they perhaps wouldn't have done traditionally. I think while people were at home during the lockdown period, during the first lockdown period, then there was a massive spike on Rightmove, so that 300-400% of people more viewings on Rightmove than there had been previously, which of course then did convert into this kind of mini boom that we've seen since things opened up again, and is only now beginning to slow down as we go into the kind of back end of the year, and the uncertainty creeps in as to what's going to happen next.
That's so funny because it matches our removals bookings. You got like 3 months after that, bam, the removal books. I mean, that's also, but it's not. But valuation wise, because it's like one thing is the volume, the other thing is the value, right? Because it's like we all know that the value is like, so it's not like, you do the Boxing Day. We all know Boxing Day is also the biggest online shopping day for everything, right? Like that's the biggest, it's better than Black Friday, and I've worked in online retail for a long time, and it's like Boxing Day was like, bam. It's like you didn't buy Christmas present, you're buying Boxing Day, bam. The day after, it's like, yeah, you got it. People at home, they got the time off. What about value? I mean, because that's volume. What about value? The price of the properties? Because I mean, what we're seeing now, like if you look at the news just right now, the price is relatively, it's going up. It's steady. It's like, but also from what we hear from our estate agents is like they're busy, and they're busy not only doing viewings, they're also busy getting contracts in.
Yeah, and I think that has absolutely been the case since the market opened up again in May. And I think the question around value is very much related to where the property is. And I think there've been pockets where value has gone up quite quickly, and pockets where actually it's really leveled off and it's been harder to get the sales. So the exodus of people from the cities, for example, wanting more space around them, wanting bigger properties. On the flip side of that, the kind of properties that we deal a lot with, kind of country properties, big country properties, which have perhaps been a much harder sell over the last, over the last 5 or 6 years. They really haven't been fashionable. New property has really come into its own over the last few years. Suddenly this year, everything that was
unsellable almost,
that was almost unsellable because it's it's not very convenient. It might not have a great EPC, for example. It might be not easy to heat. All of those things, people don't care. It's got space. You can have 2 or 3 offices. The kids can play in a room, and you can't hear them when you're on a Zoom call. All of those things. They've got space around them, and those have sold and gone up in value.
And then a big question, which I don't know if you can answer, but a big final question is, I don't know if you can answer it. It's like, we all talk about the new normal and this stuff here. I, for one, think this is here to stay. What's your view on that? Do you think that mentality is here to stay? I mean, I'm loving not being straight bang in Zone 1 middle central London anymore. I'm loving that because then suddenly I've got garden space and this stuff here. Do you think that that's here to stay? Or do you think that, it's through generations? Because our parents moved out, then we moved in, and what's your, I don't know if you can answer that, but what's your sort of
what's my guess, my best guess, I think.
So it really is a guess like everything else, but do you think that our mentality on that is
it's like anything, but obviously probably like you, we read what the commentary is around it, and we talk to an awful lot of people, both agents and vendors, in different parts of the country because we cover a national remit. So we talk to people all over the place, and I think that what will happen is that there will be, whatever happens in the next few months, there will be more people wanting to work from home. There will be more people realizing, and I think it goes back to the whole climate change thing as well. You know, it's much more sustainable. People working from home, people have realized that they don't have to get on a plane to go and do face-to-face meetings, that we've got used to this. And so I think that will impact how we live, how we work, and will then impact the type of properties that people are looking for going forwards. And I think potentially the spread of wealth in property will become a little bit more even. We'd seen that whole thing, you know, where London and the South, there was this massive concentration around property value, with the kind of Midlands and North really missing out on that. And I think now people are realizing that they can live in North Yorkshire, they can live in Northumberland, and still have a very good job down in London, for example, or in one of the more northerly cities, because they can work from home, they can connect with their clients all over the world.
I think you're right. I mean, it's a really hard question to answer because we don't know what's going to happen next, you know. But it's I think that acceptance of like how we're doing this interview now, like how we're talking to each other, I think that acceptance is there. I think it's very big. Elaine, show us your book again. You know, because I think it's worth reading this book. You know, I've only been through it. I haven't read all of it, but I'm definitely going to finish the book because I only got it 2 days ago. So I'm definitely going to finish it. Yeah. So it's like I haven't had time. It just arrived in time. But I flicked through it, and there's so many practical advice. The address stuff is so practical. It's always, Elaine, how is the best way for people to get in touch with you after this? Because I mean, you know, it's like if I'm on selling, you know, that's what I'm going to do. Elaine, what's the best way to get in touch with you? How do they follow you?
So the best way to get directly in touch is through the website, which is lemonandlimeinteriors.co.uk. On there, we've got all our links through to all our social media. We're on all the platforms, and the book is there on Amazon. So you just put in "Sell High, Sell Fast," and up it pops in Kindle and in paperback.
Well, thank you so much, Elaine. I mean, you know, the guys, I'd say like this has been very interesting, and I would actually love to do much more with Elaine and hear more about it and look at some of the properties and so forth. So we will try and put some more content on here and get some more details on it because I think it's been fascinating, Elaine. And there's so much stuff that can be done, not just for the value of the property. To summarize it, it's like it starts with everything from just start with a simple decluttering, clean the oven, clean this stuff. If you can't do it, you know where to book it, right? It's right there on the wall, but it's also the same as like, and then if you need the bigger advice of how to really do it, if it's like layout, because we don't always know about color codes. We don't know about what color should be on the wall. You know, it's Elaine you talk to. You know, it's like, should I take the carpets out? Should I not take the carpets out? Should I clean the carpets? I mean, you know, I would always advertise for the basic simple stuff. One deep clean, one decluttering, at least before you get the photos up. Please don't go straight out, get the photos up there, because as Elaine has explained so well, it's like the first 2 weeks matter so much, right? And after that, it's just there, it's stale, right? So it's like the first 2 weeks on the property is like, that's new, I'm looking at it. It also appears higher up, as I understand. So there's all these things that happens on the website. Elaine knows much more about this than I do. And I think it's worth going through the book. It's such a small investment going through the book, and then, as I said, like one simple clean, it's such a small investment, and then actually think about that, what can you do on top of that, right? Because there's so much more. So thank you so much for joining, Elaine, and I hope we'll speak again, because it's been really interesting and there's so much we could talk about. You know, I'd love to go through, it's like, what type of bedrooms are now important, what kind of kitchens, what kind of bathrooms, like should it be spa, should it be not? We can go through all this stuff here, but you can also just go and contact Elaine and have a talk about that. And it's like, what sells best now? What's the best way to do it? And as Elaine says, like, what we all want to do is sell high and sell fast, not to discount our property, but we want to get the most out of it with a good return on investment. We also don't want to sit on it forever. If we're deciding to sell, let's sell it now. Let's get it up there, get it up in the market, sell it high and sell it fast. So thank you so much for coming on, Elaine. It's been really educational, and I'd love to spend more hours and going through some of the portfolio and reading this. So thank you very much.
It's an absolute pleasure. Thank you so much for having me, and hopefully we will talk again very soon.
Yes.
You take care.